Hey everybody, I'm Chris from RxM, and today we're going to be talking about Linkerd telemetry. Because all that traffic is going through that proxy container, we can measure things like latency, like how long did it take for a request go from one pod to another pod, how many requests in total, right? What's the saturation level? What is the success rate of those requests that are going from one container to another? And so injecting these proxies in the data path gives us all of these features. And now all communication outside the pod is TLS. And the only plain text communication is between the microservice container here and the proxy container, this line here and this line here. And that's typically done over the loopback interface. So in order to see plain text communication between a proxy and its microservice container, I have to be inside the network namespace of a given pod, because that loopback interface is only inside that network namespace, right, of that pod. And I have to be on the node, right, or in the kernel, basically, of a node in my Kubernetes cluster. So it's a really small perimeter. There are other ways to do this, like you may have heard of other service meshes. The Istio has sort of introduced the ambient mode, and Cilium has a similar style of mesh where they do like node-to-node TLS, which means that the perimeter is a little bit bigger, right, at the node level instead of inside a network namespace of a given pod. But in the end, it's all really kind of, the kernel of the node. So as long as we are good at protecting our nodes and don't allow people to access those and, muck around in them, then this communication is essentially encrypted everywhere else, right? Especially where it matters. And then, of course, from clients, whether those clients are internal clients, right, other pods in the mesh, or even going through something like an ingress. Although Linkerd doesn't provide its own ingress, it can work with an ingress or a gateway if you're using API gateway in Kubernetes, so that TLS can go from an external client through the gateway or the ingress and then all the way to the proxy containers.